My husband approached me right before the divorce hearing. Today is the best day of my life. I'm going to take everything from you. His mistress stood nearby, smiling viciously. My lawyer stepped up beside me. You did everything exactly as I asked. Yes. Then get ready for a show for my husband. The divorce was about to turn into a nightmare. Aaliyah watched silently as Marcus threw a set of keys onto the kitchen table. The sound of metal hitting wood was sharp, but she didn't even flinch. Over the last 6 months, she had grown used to this one-man theater production. Marcus, her soon-to-be ex-husband, stood before her in an expensive suit, one she had picked out for him, adjusting a perfectly knotted tie. His eyes were full of triumph. He was confident, too confident. It all ends tomorrow, he spat out, not looking at her, but checking his reflection in the dark glass of the turned off. I hope you packed your things. I'm not waiting for you to box up your rags after court. The condo is mine. We discussed this. Alia slowly sipped her cold tea. She was 32 years old. But today she felt 100 years older, and simultaneously 100 years wiser. We didn't discuss anything, Marcus, she replied quietly. You talked. I listened. Those are two different things. Marcus chuckled. That signature smirk, which once seemed bold and attractive to her, now only triggered disgust. He was handsome in that glossy manicured way of a successful sales manager. 35 years old. Gym 3 times a week. Fresh lineup at the barber shop every 2 weeks. And complete certainty that the world revolved around him. Aaliyah, don't be stupid, he said, turning to her and shaking his head condescendingly. I have a shark for a lawyer. You have some old man from a free legal clinic or wherever you dug him up. I earned the money. I paid the mortgage. You sat at home for the last 2 years playing housewife. Your contribution to this condo is 0. The court will leave you with nothing. I offered you $20,000 as a settlement. You refused. Now you won't even get that. He was lying. He lied so inspirationally that it seemed he believed his own words. Aaliyah knew the truth, but she stayed silent. Now was not the time for arguments. Crystal is waiting for me in the car. He threw over his shoulder, heading for the exit. We're going to celebrate early tomorrow, right after the hearing. We're moving in here, so clear out the walk-in closet. The door slammed. Aaliyah was left alone in the silence of the spacious kitchen. She looked around at the walls she had painted herself, the custom curtains she had ordered, the table where they once dreamed of having children. Marcus thought he knew everything about her. He considered her a quiet, boring bean counter who only knew how to reconcile debits and credits and bake pies. He forgot that an accountant is not just a calculator. An accountant is a person who sees the essence of things through numbers, who knows where things are hidden, how much was spent, and where it came from. And most importantly, an accountant never forgets. The silence in the apartment became dense, almost tangible. Aaliyah placed her cup on the table. Her hands didn't shake. The trembling, the despair, the pain. All that was left in the past, 3 months ago on that rainy Tuesday in November that divided her life into before and after. That was the day her world built on faith and illusions collapsed, leaving behind only cold, sharp shards of truth. Back then, she still loved him, or at least she was convinced of her love. She lived in a cozy but fragile cocoon of trust, taking care of the home, taking freelance gigs remotely, and diligently creating comfort for her provider. Marcus would come home late, tired, smelling of expensive tobacco and other people's perfume, which he blamed on tense negotiations with female clients. Aaliyah believed him. It was easier to believe than to admit the obvious, than to destroy her world, which seemed so solid. She closed her eyes to the small inconsistencies, his irritability, the lack of attention, writing it off as work stress. On that rainy day, she was simply planning to take his best suit to the dry cleaners. Just a mundane chore she always took upon herself. Before putting the jacket in the bag, out of a habit developed over years of living together, she checked the pockets. Marcus was always leaving important business cards, flash drives, or keys in there, which she would then have to hunt for all over the apartment. In the inner breast pocket, her fingers felt a piece of thick paper folded into quarters. At first, she thought it was another business card. Aaliyah unfolded it. It was a receipt from a jewelry boutique called Lile Ciele, not some mall kiosk, but a high-end luxury retailer downtown. The date was yesterday. Time, 2:30 in the afternoon. The total amount forced her to sit down on the edge of the sofa. Her legs gave out. $5,000. Item description: gold bracelet with topaz as your collection. Something inside her chest snapped. It felt like an invisible string stretched to its limit, had burst with a deafening sound. Yesterday at 2:30, Marcus had sent her a text. Buried at work. Meeting with the CEO. Will be late. Don't wait up. He had promised that in the evening they would watch a new movie together. Instead, he was buying a bracelet. Her first impulse was to call, scream, demand explanations, throw the damned receipt in his face. But professional deformation took over. Aaliyah was an auditor by calling, even if she was currently working as a simple bookkeeper. Emotions are chaos. They prevent clear thinking. Numbers, those are irrefutable evidence. She put down her phone to avoid doing anything stupid and walked over to her laptop. Her fingers tapped on the keys quickly and confidently. The age of social media is a terrible time for liars, she thought bitterly. Aaliyah knew that Marcus had a new assistant named Crystal Duza. He had mentioned her casually. Young, smart, makes good coffee, always organized. Aaliyah found Crystal's profile in 2 minutes. Public account, 20,000 followers. Bright, provocative photos from restaurants, clubs, expensive trips. A typical Instagram diva. The last post was made yesterday evening. A photo of an elegant hand with a flawless manicure holding a glass of champagne against the backdrop of a luxury car interior. On the wrist sparkled a gold bracelet with topaz stones. It was impossible to mistake. The caption read, "Bah, spoils me. Best night of my life," and the geotag. The same pretentious restaurant where Marcus had taken Aaliyah to propose 5 years ago. The place of their first shared miracle. Aaliyah looked at the screen and with every heartbeat the life drained out of her. There was no hysteria. Only a cold, deadening realization. She had been betrayed. Not just physically cheated on, which would have been unbearable enough, but betrayed systematically, cynically, intentionally. While she skimped on herself, skipping a new haircut, postponing a trip to see her parents, saving for their emergency fund, dreaming of children. Marcus was buying his mistress jewelry worth 3 months of her salary. He was spending their joint money to create a beautiful life for someone else. That night, Marcus came home drunk and happy. He stumbled loudly into the kitchen, muttered something about a successful deal, then collapsed in the bedroom. Aaliyah pretended to be asleep, lying in the dark with her eyes open, listening to his even, satisfied breathing. She made a decision. I won't just leave. I won't be a victim. I won't let him trample me. I'm taking back what's mine, down to the last penny. For the next 3 months, Aaliyah lived a double life. By day, she was the model, slightly sad wife who understood everything. The husband's busy schedule, his business trips, the business dinners. She maintained the appearance of a normal family life. Cooked meals, cleaned, and even occasionally allowed herself to naively ask how his day went. But as soon as Marcus stepped out the door or fell asleep, she turned into a detective, an auditor, an investigator. She set up her secret headquarters in a small pantry she had converted into a home office. Their entire financial life was in the palm of her hand. She simply hadn't looked closely before, trusting him as the head of the family. Marcus was sure Aaliyah didn't have access to his main accounts. He had changed the passwords for online banking and set up 2-factor authentication. Naive, he forgot that all passwords were stored in an encrypted format in the cloud service, which was accessible from their home tablet lying around in the kitchen. And of course, he didn't guess that Aaliyah had long learned to read him like an open book by his habits. His gestures, the slightest inconsistencies in his words. Aaliyah began the investigation methodically and ruthlessly. She opened a new Excel spreadsheet on her laptop and named it Balance of Justice. She divided it into multiple tabs: real estate, Marcus official income, Marcus gay income, Marcus personal expenses, mistress, family expenses. Aaliyah, this was her revenge, calculated to the cent. First, she pulled the history on the mortgage. Marcus loved to repeat, I pay for the condo. You are nobody here. You have no rights. Aaliyah pulled the old statements. 5 years ago, her beloved grandmother, Nana Rose, passed away, leaving her granddaughter an inheritance of $150,000. It was exactly this money that went toward the down payment for their, as it seemed then, shared apartment. Marcus had convinced her back then not to transfer the money directly to the developer, but to send it to his account so they could pay everything in one transaction for convenience. Convenience, Aaliyah whispered, staring at the laptop screen. How thoroughly you thought everything through, Marcus. How intricately you prepared the ground for your future betrayal. She found the bank statement for the month the condo was purchased. Here was the deposit from the sale of her grandmother's estate into her account. Here was the transfer to Marcus's card. And here was the withdrawal from his account to the bank for the down payment. The chain was transparent, but it needed to be notarized. Document copies collected and certified. Every step was carefully thought out. Next, the monthly payments. Marcus received an official salary, but Aaliyah, even working remotely, earned money to her money, though less, went to food, utilities, clothes, household needs, and small joys, and she had a savings account where the remaining part of her inheritance sat. Every month on the 15th, she transferred a sum equal to the mortgage payment to Marcus. She did this so he would feel like the man of the house, who pressed the pay button himself. What stupidity, what a naive desire to support his ego. Aaliyah downloaded all payment orders for the last 3 years in the memo line. For every transfer she had always written for mortgage. It was her intuitive insurance, her little bookkeeping habit, which was now destined to save her. But the most interesting part began when she started digging into Marcus' spending. This part of the work was the most unpleasant, but also the most informative. She knew his official salary was decent, about $150,000 a year. It allowed them to live comfortably, but not rich. However, the spending she saw on his card statements didn't match his official income. Restaurants, boutiques, hotels, expensive gifts, trips. Where was the money coming from? Too much. Too often. Aaliyah hacked into his work email. The password was his date of birth. Laughably banal. The inbox was clean, but in the trash and archive folders, she found a goldmine. Fake contracts with shell companies. Invoices for services that were never actually rendered. Emails calculating kickbacks from suppliers. Marcus, using his position as head of sales, was inflating prices for clients, and the difference was sent to the card of a strawman, a childhood friend, who then wired the money back to Marcus as a debt repayment or birthday gift. Aaliyah printed document after document. The schemes were primitive, calculated on the assumption that no one would dig deep. Any tax inspector or auditor would have cracked them in an hour. Marcus hadn't been caught only because the volumes were medium-sized, and he hadn't gotten too greedy until recently. With Crystal's arrival, his appetite grew, and his caution dulled. Over the last 6 months, the kickback amounts had multiplied, and it was exactly this money earned through fraud that was flying down the drain. Gambling. Aaliyah found transactions to offshore sports betting sites. $2,000, $5,000, $10,000. She whispered the numbers, and the hair on her arm stood up. She saw how he flushed amounts down the toilet that could have paid for a renovation, a new car, or started a small business. In 2 years, he had lost over $100,000. That was the price of a luxury car, or half a condo in a prestigious neighborhood. That was money he stole from the family, from their shared future, from her, and of course, Crystal. Evidence was everywhere. Tickets to Cabo on dates when Marcus was supposedly on a business trip in Cleveland, payment for a 5-star hotel in Miami, purchases at Saks Fifth Avenue and other expensive boutiques. Photos of Crystal wearing these items. By the end of the 2nd month, Aaliyah had a folder 3 fingers thick, tightly packed with printouts, certified statements, screenshots, and copies of contracts. This wasn't just a divorce file. This was a ready-made criminal indictment for Marcus, and total moral destruction of his reputation. The work was exhausting. Every evening when Marcus returned home, she had to stifle her rage, pretend, smile. Sometimes she wanted to scream, to drop everything. But then she would remember Crystal's smile, Marcus humiliating her, and she would grit her teeth again. Focusing on the numbers helped. Facts were irrefutable. They were her only support. Aaliyah needed a lawyer, not just an attorney, but a strategist. A person who could present her accounting report in court so that it became a verdict. She needed not justice, but retribution, cold and ruthless. A friend who had recently gone through a messy divorce herself recommended Mr. Sterling. He's old school, the friend said. Looks like a grandpa librarian. Gray hair, glasses on his nose, always with a fountain pen. But in court, he tears opponents down to their molecules so there's nothing left. He doesn't take just anyone. He chooses cases that interest him or where he sees deep injustice. But if he takes you, consider it won. He's like an old samurai for whom honor and law are above all else. Their first meeting took place in a small, cozy office in Midtown, piled with leather-bound books from floor to ceiling. It smelled of old paper and pipe tobacco. Mr. Sterling, gay-haired with a wrinkled face, cleaning his glasses with a plaid handkerchief, listened to Aaliyah attentively. He didn't interrupt, only occasionally making notes in a notebook with a fountain pen that made a slight scratching sound. His eyes, hidden behind thick lenses, were sharp and tenacious, like an X-ray. When Aaliyah finished her dry, methodical story and laid her thick folder on the table, Mr. Sterling chuckled. He was silent for a long time, turning pages, studying graphs, statements, and copies of contracts. "You know, my dear," he finally said in a creaky voice that seemed to belong to an ancient sage, "usually, women come to me with emotions. He's a scoundrel. He's cheating on me. Punish him. But the proof is scarce. Just talk. You, however, came with a ready-made indictment, a full package of documents. This isn't just a file, it's nearly a completed sentence. He opened the section on Marcus's financial schemes, carefully studied the wire transfers, checked dates and amounts. His eyebrows shot up, showing genuine surprise and respect. Are you an auditor? He asked, looking up at Aaliyah. Accountant. Aaliyah replied modestly. A good accountant is worth 10 lawyers. Mr. Sterling chuckled. There is enough material here, not just for the division of assets, but to make your husband change his Armani suit for an orange jumpsuit. Do you want to put him in prison? It is quite possible, you know. Aaliyah thought about it. Revenge was sweet, but she didn't want to be a beast. She wanted to close this chapter of her life, not get bogged down in court proceedings for years. No, Mr. Sterling, I don't want blood. I don't want my children, if I ever have them, to know that their mother put their father in jail. I want justice. I need my apartment, which I paid for, and compensation for what he stole from me. For what he squandered from the family budget on his vices and another woman. I want him to lose everything he valued so much. Reasonable. The lawyer nodded. Anger is a bad advisor. Cold calculation. That is our weapon. Our goal is maximum damage to him with minimum losses for you. So here's the plan. We will file a counterclaim, but we will show the documents only in court at the very last moment. Let him think you are defenseless, that you have no aces. The element of surprise is half the success. He will relax, make mistakes, say too much, act arrogant, and then we will snap the trap shut, from which he cannot escape. They prepared for a whole month, rehearsing every word. Mr. Sterling taught her not to react to provocations and to keep a poker face. As he put it, he will humiliate you, he warned. He will press for pity, then use fear. He will bring that mistress of his to sting you harder. Your job, Aaliyah, is to be a stone wall. Look at him like empty space. He needs to realize on his own that he is done. Aaliyah memorized this lesson. She wasn't an actress, but these 3 months had made her stronger. She was no longer a naive wife, she was a warrior, and her weapons were numbers. Returning her thoughts to the present, Aaliyah looked at the clock again. It was already past midnight, but she didn't want to sleep. Adrenaline boiled in her blood. She took out her phone and dialed a number. Mr. Sterling, she said in a steady, calm voice, surprised at her own composure. He left. Yes, he is absolutely sure of victory. Making plans for tomorrow evening. Yes, I have the folder. Everything is ready until tomorrow. Good job, Aaliyah. The old man's voice was cheerful despite the late hour. Get some sleep. Tomorrow will be a heavy but wonderful day, a day of justice. She put down the phone, and for the first time that day, allowed herself to smile. The smile was cold, anticipating. Tomorrow, Marcus wanted a show. Well, he would get one. A one-man show where the main character would be him, and his role. The morning of the trial was gray. The sky was covered with low leaden clouds. A fine drizzle was falling. But for Aaliyah, it was clear as a spring day. She got up at 6 o'clock in the morning, took a contrast shower, washing away the remnants of anxiety and fear. The feeling of water on her skin was refreshing, bringing clarity. She went to the wardrobe. No victim looks, no dark, mournful tones. She put on a strict navy blue sheath dress that fit her figure perfectly, emphasizing her restrained elegance and professionalism. The color symbolized calm and confidence. She pulled her box braids back into a tight, neat bun at the nape of her neck. Minimal makeup, just to hide traces of insomnia, but emphasized the clarity of her gaze. In the mirror, a calm, collected black woman reflected back. There were no tears or resentment in her eyes, only steel determination. Can you handle this? She asked her reflection silently. You are right, and power is in the truth and in the numbers. She grabbed the folder with the documents, checked for her ID, a pen, and a small notebook. Her bag was strict, businesslike, without unnecessary details. She left the apartment. In the parking lot stood her reliable Honda Civic. Bought with her own money before the marriage, older but faithful, unlike her husband. She sat behind the wheel, started the engine, and drove out into the gray, but now promising city of Atlanta. The courthouse greeted her with a hum of voices mixed with the smell of old paper, dust and cheap coffee from a vending machine near the elevator. Visitors scurried back and forth. Their faces expressed anxiety, hope, or doom. Aaliyah arrived early as always. Mr. Sterling was already waiting for her at the entrance to courtroom number 4, imperturbable as a sphinx, as if he had grown roots in this place. How is the mood? He asked, shaking her hand. His palm was dry and warm, just like the first time. Fighting spirit, even eager. she replied. That is excellent. Remember, not a word without my signal. Let him talk. Every word of his is a nail in his own coffin. They went up to the second floor where their courtroom was located. Marcus was already standing at the doors. He really looked as if he was ready for the Oscars or his own wedding, not a divorce. An ideal dark blue suit, a snow-white shirt, cufflinks gleaming in the dim light of the corridor. He was the embodiment of self-satisfaction. Next to him, clinging to his elbow, stood Crystal. She was 24. But thanks to the cosmetologists, hairstylists, and fashion stylists paid for by Marcus, she looked older and more expensive than she really was. However, you can't buy taste. Her skirt was too short, her neckline too deep for an official government building, and the red lipstick on her full lips was too bright and aggressive. She looked at Aaliyah with a challenge, with undisguised superiority, as if she, Crystal, were the legitimate mistress of the situation, and Aaliyah was an annoying nuisance, a fly that needed to be swatted with a newspaper. She didn't even try to hide her gloating. Seeing his wife, Marcus broke into a wide, predatory smile and moved toward her, pulling Crystal along. He wanted to make a scene to humiliate her in front of everyone. Well then, he said loudly, so that the people sitting on the benches waiting for their cases could hear. An elderly woman with a tear-stained face, a man nervously fingering a folder, came to surrender. Or maybe you changed your mind. Last chance. He stopped a step away from Aaliyah, towering over her. He smelled of expensive cologne, the very one Aaliyah had given him for their anniversary 3 years ago. The scent that used to evoke tenderness and memories of happy days now only caused nausea and disgust. Today is the best day of my life, he continued, looking her straight in the eye, savoring the moment of her supposed humiliation. I'm taking everything from you, Aaliyah. The condo, the car, the accounts. You realize you are nobody, empty space. Without me, you're just a gray mouse with a calculator. Who needs you in your 30s? You have nothing except your geriatric lawyer who can't do a thing. Crystal giggled, covering her mouth with a hand, boasting a flawless manicure, demonstratively flashing that same topaz bracelet. Marcus, don't be so cruel, she sang in a sugary, oily voice that had more venom than a cobra's bite. Maybe let's leave her the old sofa. It doesn't match our style anyway. We ordered that Italian bedroom set, remember? White with gold. That sofa would fit perfectly in her mama's little apartment. Marcus laughed, appreciating the joke. He felt like the master of the situation, the winner. True enough. Take the sofa. You'll have somewhere to sleep at your mom's place. Actually, no. I'll sell the sofa, too, on principle. You won't get a penny. You'll be working until you're old, reconciling debits and credits. Aaliyah looked at them. Not a single muscle twitched on her face. Not a single feeling reflected in her eyes. Before, these words would have wounded her to the heart, made her cry, make excuses. Now she heard only empty sound, the noise of wind in her ears. She saw before her not a beloved husband, but an audit object. A distressed asset that needed to be written off the balance sheet of the enterprise called life. She thought about numbers, facts, the flawlessness of her evidence base. She didn't answer anything. Just looked right through him with her accountant's gaze, as if reading a bad report that needed to be sent back for revision. She saw right through him, saw his pathetic bravado, his insecurity, which he hid behind arrogance. Alia's silence always irritated Marcus. He craved a scandal, screams, tears. He wanted to see her humiliation, wanted to feed his ego with her pain, but saw only an icy, impenetrable wall. His smile began to slide off his face. Mr. Sterling coughed delicately, attracting attention. Your self-confidence, young man, is worthy of a better application, he noted quietly but weightily, as if firing a shot. Save your strength for the courtroom and your vocal cords, too. You will need them to make excuses, and you will need them very badly. Marcus measured the old man with a contemptuous look from top to bottom, as if at an annoying misunderstanding. Ah, the defender of the poor and wretched. Get ready to write appeals, Pops. Although they won't help you. I have everything locked down. My lawyer knows the judge personally. They're buddies. Congratulations, Mr. Sterling replied dryly. Connections are good, but the law is better, and flawless evidence is a verdict. At that moment, the door to the hall opened, and a clerk with a tired but indifferent face called out, "Plaintiffs and defendants in the case of Thorne versus Vance, please enter the courtroom. Your turn." The courtroom was small, stuffy, and bureaucratic. The worn carpet muted their steps. The rows of wooden benches were hard. On the walls hung faded state symbols, the flag and the state seal, which seemed somewhat alien here. The air was heavy, saturated with the smell of old paper and tense anticipation. The judge, A woman in her 50s, with a stern face and a piercing gaze over her glasses, sat in her place. She tapped her gavel and quickly verified those present. Her voice was strict but calm. Marcus's lawyer, a slick man around 40 named Bradley, with shifting eyes and a greasy smile, immediately grabbed the bull by the horns. He behaved loosely, feeling the client's support, and apparently believing in his own infallibility and connections. He began his speech, pacing in front of the judge's bench. Gesturing, "Your Honor," he began in a sugary staged voice like an actor on stage. "The situation is extremely clear and benign. This is a typical case where a non-working spouse tries to cash in on the success of her talented husband. My client Marcus Thorne is a successful businessman, head of sales at a major company, the primary breadwinner in the family. In recent years, his income has exceeded the spouse's income. Many